I know what I gave Damien to read was almost a sermon in itself, but he read it so beautifully, and it was a message that I felt needed to be said and needed to be heard by you, and he delivered it beautifully. Because the whole title of today's talk is, and I didn't put the ending on it, I just put being kind, but what we were supposed to talk about today through the Centers for Spiritual Living universally is being kind in a cruel world. And I just thought, that just doesn't sit right with me, being kind in a cruel world, yet haven't we been experiencing that? Some of you might have been feeling a little bit torn or shifted by the way the news media and just the world events continue to pour into our experience. And because we have such access right now to social media and to the opinions of so many, that we want to sometimes just not get up in the morning and pay attention to it. However, I dwell on this a lot because I don't like when my heart gets torn. I recognize in the scriptures, in every faith path, it is spoken, it is said, that when we are divided, when our hearts are divided, we cannot stand. We cannot even stand inside our own skin when we're feeling that way. So how divided have you been? How I just ask you to inquire inside yourself, how flippant have you been with some of the things that have come across your path that have been triggers for you? We could ask ourselves to be so centered, to recognize that God is only one and that this good is unfolding always. We have spiritual truths that we anchor into. And I want to remind you, this month has been one about love, compassion, and caring. That's the message of this entire month. And one of the principles of the Centers for Spiritual Living, we embrace love as the self-givingness of God to all creation, moving through us into expression as compassion, caring, mutual respect, and kindness. We express interest in and support for the well-being of ourselves and others. We express unconditional love. We express unconditional love. We express unconditional love when observing the suffering of others and do what we can to give aid and show compassion. And when I have moments where I feel I'm in a muddle in my mind and heart, I will turn to my teachers. I will turn to Gandhi's way in the world. I will turn to, as I've shared many times, the wisdom of Paramahansa Yogananda. And one of my favorite books in the tradition of the self-realization was The World in Transition, Finding Spiritual Security in Times of Change. And what I find every time I open a scripture, they too are speaking of a time in their world, in their experience, when things seemed very grim and very dark. And Yogananda said this, speaking towards the millennium, this is what he wrote in his lifetime. The world will go on like this in its ups and downs. Where shall we look for the sense of direction? Not to the prejudices aroused within us by our habits and the environment influence of our family and our country or the world, but in the guiding voice of truth within. And we could read past those words very quickly, but there is within each and every one of you that soul force, that element of truth. And this is an important message today. And I am humbled to try to deliver it to you in such a way that you walk out of here and you do recognize that there is a good unfolding always. There is something that I learned while I was away for a couple of weeks, and it was some wisdom of Emma Curtis Hopkins, who is the teacher of all teachers. And she was in the late 1800s when she was doing her most profound work. And so I'm in part of this message today, I will share something that I finally understood in what was shared with me, and I hope it makes a difference in your world. But ask yourself, as I speak, How is the story going in you? How is this world going? There is a book that they're referencing this month by Sharon Salzberg, and she's a meditation teacher and a Buddhist, but she wrote a book called The Kindness Handbook. So if you're finding that you would like more tools in order to help guide your wisdom, you see, whenever I am influenced or impacted by my own discomfort in something, I turn to the teachers outside myself, and I read until it resonates with that soul force within me, and then I can feel the change happening. But I ask you to recognize, even in the smallest ways, when a friend criticizes you, how do you feel? What happens? Do you just blow it off? And I'm speaking when a friend criticizes you, not a boss or a coworker, but a friend. And you can recognize the contracted state, the way the heart shrinks inside of you. Or have you experienced those times where you've grown impatient when somebody's trying to help you? Have you grown impatient or contracted inside yourself when you have a really loud cell phone user in a restaurant or in a library or someplace where you're trying to be quiet and focused and there's the cell phone user? Would your first response to some of these situations be of kindness? That's what I want you to look at the moment I'm asking us, because the soul force in us recognizes the light and the love and the truth. It knows it. We don't have to seek anywhere for that, but we have to continually turn to that touch point inside of ourselves and say, I know that truth that dwells within me as me. I know that truth. I know that love prevails here. I know that a greater good is unfolding. I know that good is all there is. So when you are triggered, what happens? What throws you back? And try to take some time with yourself to explore and have some insight and get some clarity on why that trigger is your trigger. Why did you choose to allow your soul to be steered into that direction? And it could be, for each and every one of you, it's something different, I know that. There is a story of one of my teachers, Nishala Devi, and she wrote The Secret Power of Women from a woman's perspective on the Yoga Sutras. And she shared two particular stories that I found quite intriguing. And one of the practices that I'll share with you today as well is the loving kindness prayer. And she chose to use that. She expresses it. There was a time when she lived in an ashram. Now you think that living in an ashram, your world would be just absolutely perfect, right? That everybody's, got their game face on and they're doing the right thing. But she was in charge of a large department, and many of the people that she had there to supervise were under her wing, and there was a lot of love flowing. But there was one, and she describes it, one grumpy monk. And she said he very much resented doing anything that was asked of him, especially if it was a woman that issued the directive. Each morning she dreaded having to tell him the needs of the day. He remained quiet as he stood in front of me, she said. But as he turned and walked away, he would mutter unkind words. It was very much something that disturbed Nishala in her work with this person, but no amount of words or gestures would ever soothe him. He was set in his way. So she called upon the spiritual practice of cultivating the attitude to look at those disquieting thoughts, she described it as, those disquieting thoughts or feelings, and to cultivate an opposite and more elevated attitude. Now, isn't that what we're all being asked of right now in our world? Let us, when we're triggered, please take some of these gems home with you. These are the wisdoms of the scriptures. When we're triggered, find an elevated attitude that is opposite to where your heart is directing you in that moment, because that moment is a trigger from the ego that has been layered and developed through your lifespan. So she called upon this practice, and she designed a spiritual practice in which he was the principal deity every day for her. Each day he entered the office, she would imagine placing a garland of flowers over his head and touching his feet. As he turned to walk away, murmuring under his breath, my hands would join together and in namaste, and I would pranam, and I would say, I wish you well. This worship continued and initiated itself pretty soon automatically each time he came into her presence, each time he passed by. The practice then sprung into being each time I thought about him. Of course, no one else knew about it, only my mind and only my heart held this secret. 1 week into the practice, I was no longer stifling a visceral reaction to run when I saw him. The practice was benefiting me in many ways. My mind and heart were now focusing on the flowers of garlands and the worship rather than dwelling on the strategy to avoid a grumpy person. That's how magic it is when you turn to your spiritual practice and you use it as a tool. One morning at the usual time, he appeared in my office with a surprised tone. You know that I don't like you very much, don't you? He said to her. And she nodded yes, as to not give away a voice of chance to betray me, she said. She didn't want to say too much. She said, it's a funny thing, though, he continued. In the last week, I find that I'm actually starting to look forward to seeing you, he said. Well, he goes, not a whole lot, but just a little bit. And I can't figure out why. Can you imagine why? And I thought, there it is. There it is. So sometimes we turn so hard on ourselves the moment we are moved in a different direction than where we want to see our world, a world in transition. Instead of looking at it as a cruel world, let us look at it as a world in just transition. She also spoke of being kind. There's ways we can choose being kind. These are the moments she would express. Say you are going to have a picnic and somebody lights up a big fat stinking cigar and they're just blowing it in your direction like in your face. And she, you can feel these moments. You can feel, yeah, that's not very nice unless it's your flavor of cigar and you want to join them. So how do you handle that? How do you handle some of these simple everyday occurrences? How do you choose? What are your choices? This is what I invite you to continually look into, how kindness can be the transformative practice that can flow through you. It can be a companion of your heart that will open greater joy, greater understanding, greater meaning, greater compassion in all that you do. Kindness is something that can make a difference in the next moment that unfolds in yourself and others. Those are words of Sharon Salzberg. Kindness will make a difference in how the next moment unfolds in yourself and in others, because we are one and our feelings are contagious. People know when you're shutting down. They know. You're not hiding it from them. They know when the love's not there. And you know when the love's not flowing out from them. So how do we lighten up this? It's to be the truth and to be kind. What do you think people are saying about you behind your back? Because there's this idea about kindness. To be more realized, it needs to be distinguished from you being ineffectual or a weak person just because you're choosing kindness. It needs to be infused with a wisdom and a power and supported by a courage and threaded with balance. Sharon's words as well. And I think that's the key point there, to infuse your kindness, not just to, be sappy and be a doormat out in the world and to shut down and act like the things that are important to you aren't important. I'm not speaking of that. I want you to stand in your truth, that soul force that dwells within you, but infuse it with wisdom, support it by courage, and thread it with balance. There's this saying from the Buddha, just as the dawn is the forerunner and the first indication of the rising sun, so is the right view the forerunner and the first indication of a wholesome state. Watch that state of mind. We need to explore, and that's the beauty of our philosophy, because we're always being asked, aren't we, to see what makes us be who we are, What makes you have your feelings? What makes you a liberal? What makes you a conservative? What makes you stand by President Trump? What makes you be confused? Okay, when I say those words, even we stay away from political separation here in our center. Reverend Mary and I dedicate ourselves to just walking that razor's edge, not to be political up here, not to try to use a spiritual influence upon you to change your beliefs. Those are upon you, but ask yourself, where did I ever get that? Where did I get my beliefs? Who was I before that belief? What would I be without that belief? Is this belief kind? Is this belief, whoever I am supporting, whatever belief, is it serving mankind in all ways? And if it is, by all means, march forward with that. But have a really balanced view and be willing to soften the edges. Watch where your heart contracts. Kindness is the starting point of this. Sam Keen says, "The still small voice of God never calls on me to be like another man. It appeals to me to rise to my full stature and fulfill the promise that sleeps within my being." To fulfill the promise that sleeps within my being. What is that promise that sleeps within my being? It is to love all and serve all. That's one of mine. To love all and serve all. So I have not enjoyed being in a divided state. But I also recognize clear back when the Bhagavad Gita was written, he was divided. That's what the whole story's about, being divided. And finding love, finding that path, finding your way back into resolution of kindness. So know yourself, know your motives. Practice a loving kindness. Practice it with tact, with care, and deep, abiding consideration for mankind. So Sharon says these words as well. Our view of who we are, what we are capable of, what matters in the world, will mold your intention, which in turn molds your action. Look at your intentions and watch your actions, watch your reactions. How we look at our lives becomes the basis for how we act and how we live, and whether our choices are shaped by love and kindness, and how we live and transform our understanding will transform our whole life, our happiness, and our degree of connectedness, our freedom. None of these are fixed in any particular external. It does not matter what's going on outside the world. It is a trigger for you to look deep within and ask yourself, to soul search yourself, how is my inner being divided here? And how can I find my path back into wholeness? Where is love here? Because we are held in a universal principle, and we have a potential to become that truth. This is an exciting time for us to be in a spiritual practice, to be living in our truth. Ernest Holmes says, ultimately we shall see the universe rest on the shoulders of love. Now that could be, oh, love, yeah, and go back into the 60s and sing all those hippie songs to make ourselves feel better. But really think about what love is to you. That God is love, this is Ernest Holmes, and that all the errors of man are the result of the ignorance of his own true nature. The happy outlook of life is always, always constructive. The understanding heart is always filled with sympathy and helpfulness towards all. An evolved soul judges no one. An evolved soul judges no one. This is such a powerful message because I want our Centers for Spiritual Living, I want our congregants, I want our people to live that evolved life, to not be caught in this muck. I want us to rise above and to see that a greater good is absolutely unfolding here. An evolved soul judges no one, condemns no one, but realizes that all are on the road of experience. We're all trying to experience. We're trying to find our way. We're seeking the same goal, and we each must ultimately find his home in heaven. What's heaven? Now here's Here's where Emma Curtis Hopkins comes in, and here's something that I want you to take away with you today and just practice it. Her base of her scripture is heaven is the good. And we talk about delving into our consciousness, don't we? We delve into conscious understanding. And so what is this level of consciousness, and who are we in this broad idea of God consciousness? We have ours, the small wave, and then we're part of the ocean, and God being the ocean. And we sometimes get so caught in our form and our suffering and our contracted state, our individual wave just kind of frozen, freeze frame. But we watch ourselves blend back into the one, and we unify with that love. So she is speaking of the heaven as that higher consciousness. That is what Jesus spoke to. It is the higher consciousness. Heaven is within you. It's not some place that we're going to find outside of ourselves on the news or in social media or in any of the books that I read. I'm not going to find my heaven there, but I'll find my guidance back to look within and to find the heaven within my own heart. The heaven within you is never divided. It is a solid truth. Here's the important piece. She speaks of this heaven. And you have seen many of the mystics, when they're in their altered state, their eyes look up. They're looking up. They're looking up. They're looking up into that higher realm. We have that, each and every one of us individualized. We have that higher realm. Let us look up, and that's where the good is. Let me share with you her words, her understanding, and this is from a practice that Reverend Andrew went to a minister's conference. Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis from the Seattle Church is a scholar of Emma Curtis Hopkins, and she had the group do this practice. We took it to a women's retreat up there. 40 people did it. I did it personally, and I'm going, wow, that makes a difference. So I want you to stew on something right now. I don't want to hear about it, but I can feel the energy when I say stew on it, because all of a sudden all these lights come down to 10 watt. But it's stew on something and watch. I want you to look down. I want you to look down into your thinking. So it's this, I want you to recognize this too. Invite yourself to try to play with this idea a little bit. When you take yourself down and you look into whatever it is that you're stewing on, pick anything, and you kind of watch. You watch what you feel like. Pay attention to the divine body as it feels whatever that is going on in there, and you're looking down into it. And then you take that same story and you look out. You look straight out. And you think about it again, and you're looking straight out into the issue. And you feel your body. And you look at the mind. Now, where's the good? You look up. You look up into heaven's gate. You look up into the divine light, and you offer it up, and it disappears. It has resolution. It no longer is stuck to you, but it has divine awakening. It is infused with love. You look down. There's a level of consciousness, or reptilian brain, so to speak, down, muddled. We look out. The linear brain starts to sort things out and plan and have an outline of what to do. That's how our mind works. We look up. That's what she's saying. It's all good. Look up. It'll transform all things into that good. Play with it. Play with it this week. Watch it transform your heart. Look at the mystics' pictures and see their eyes forever in deep meditative states, looking up. What are they looking at? The good, the light, the truth, the love. Play with it. Emma Curtis Hopkins, a mystic, a teacher of all teachers, forever saying, there is a good and I ought to have it. It's one of her favorite sayings. There is a good out there in the universe and I ought to have it. You know what? There's a good out in the universe and you ought to have it. Look up. Get out of the suffering that's dwelling here. How? with kindness. You know, I'll be speaking of this again at 10:30, but I'm already out of time. I'm getting the little sign up there. But I'm so passionate about this because I feel that so many times we are controlled by our habit ways. The habits keep continually pulling us back to what we've done again and again and again. We are framed by our upbringing. Okay. Okay, God. I guess this is an important point. It got your attention. It scared the bejeebies out of me. Talk about 10 watt. It's now 2 watt. You think about the moment you saw a bird, right, when you were a little baby. It's just you're looking at this object in the sky, and somebody goes, it's a bird. And now suddenly, your whole world, that's a bird. Your perception, that's a bird, right? Forevermore, that's a bird. We don't just get to see it for what it is. We frame it, it's a bird, it'll always be a bird. Might have been an airplane. It's our perceptual fields. That's so important. And when you realize all the people that you're bumping into that you feel like is your potential enemy, they just have their perceptual field. It's an innocent state. It's an egoic state that we need our egos to survive. But the soul force, that which is beyond that which is we can love unconditionally, is this greater truth. So what is happening to you? Why do you believe what you believe? Why are you stuck in that thought in your head? Why don't you believe the thoughts in someone else's head? You know, why don't you? They're thoughts too. No, they're not mine. And that's okay. But let the other person have their thoughts. It's so much freedom. It's so much freedom. I would love to see you all walk out of here with lighter hearts, lighter feelings, because these thoughts are going to happen. They arise out of space. It's the nature of our mind. To think, to think, to think, to think, to think. We could say, I'm not going to have any thoughts today. I'm going to meditate. The thoughts just float. Our spiritual practice is to go beyond the beyond, into that realm of light and truth, and label nothing. Just allow it to be. Just allow everything just to be as it is. Sylvia Bornstein says, the essential wisdom is to know what is happening when it is happening and not to be in a contest with it. Oh, but I want to argue it. Don't be in a contest with anything. Know your heart, know your truth, and again, go back to that place of wisdom. Walk your truth, speak your truth out into our world. This is not about going into denial, but it's about being tactful. And I'll close with this clever thought from the book that we used at the Women's Retreat recently that I did in Bellingham. You are the one. You are the one. Imagine meeting someone who laughs at all your jokes, has similar tastes, really grasps your take on things. The person understands all your hopes and fears, and in short, this is someone who really gets you. They really get you. How would you feel? You probably feel ecstatic. And there's only one person in this world who completely fits that description, and he or she is right inside your own skin. This is someone you can really learn to love. You think about it. That inner self's really got your back. They really got your back. Get to know that inner self. Get to know that level of truth. So I'm going to take you into the meditation of loving kindness, and think about this. Think about again something in your world. A greater good is unfolding. And closing also with the prayer of Yogananda's. Please join me in his heart as I speak his clarity in his wisdom. Let us pray in our hearts for a league of souls and a united world. Though we may seem divided by race, creed, color, class, and political prejudice, still, as children of the one God, we are able in our souls to feel brotherhood and feel world unity. May we work for the creations of a united world in which every nation will be a useful part, guided by God through man's enlightened conscience. By God's enlightened conscience, look up to that good. In our hearts, we can all learn to be free from hate and selfishness. Let us all pray for harmony among the nations, that they march hand in hand through the gate of a fair new civilization. So in your heart of hearts, as we turn off the frequency of news media, social media, the influence of our upbringing, as we just turn deeper and look up to the good, let us hold this idea of the loving kindness meditation. As you take the one that you love and you place them at the altar of the state of consciousness, and you see them wrapped in the light, and you speak these words, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. And you take yourself and you place yourself at that place of good in your consciousness. May I be safe. May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. And you take that distant friend, the passerby, the one in the market, the one you don't know personally, but you see, and you speak their words, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. Keep your heart open, watch the good unfold. And you look to that which you would name your enemy, your politician, your world leader, those that you have a sense of conflict with, but your heart softens and opens and you look to the good and you speak, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy. May you live with ease. So be it. And so it is. The truth there, what you dwell upon, continues. What do you choose to dwell upon? Ask yourself. Let your last thought be a thought of blessing, not a curse, not anger, not a fight. Let's lift into that place of good and leave every situation in our world wrapped in love and light and truth. Thank you. Your hearts are 500 watt. Thank you.